Okay, so I'm going to do a whirlwind tour of ESS Assist and ESS Corporate Services. So ESS Assist has been going about 9 years now, and it was born out of a conversation I had with one of my other fellow directors, a chap called Gavin Newbold. Got one of my other directors as well on board. This meeting is Stuart Atkinson. And my history in training was been in training since the mid-90s. We then bought a training company in 2001, and then we grew that training company over the next 9 years. Ultimately, we had about 320 staff. Staff up to about 20 staff. We grew it to 320 staff, and we sold it to the Bibby Distribution Group in a trade sale in August 2010. At which point I retired. After I did a little bit of consultancy, but essentially I retired, and then I was persuaded to come back by Gavin, and Stuart's been with us now for about 7 years now. Why did we set up ESS Assist? ESS Assist was set up to basically have a one-stop stop of products and services that I really couldn't access as a training provider without going to lots of different organizations. So I'm just going to very quickly just give you an idea of the stuff that we do get involved in on ESS Assist, which is the consultancy side of the business. We do tender and funding opportunity identification. So I've got an online tender tracker on there. We do bid writing and application support. We do APAR and apprenticeship provider support. So where possible, where there's a gap in provision, the APAR has been shut for a while, which is the apprenticeship applications. Unless you've got a gap in you can find a gap in apprenticeship within your area, and you've got employer support. We do quality assurance and improvement, learner recruitment for those training providers that are looking for learners. We do consultancy around business growth and strategy, employer engagement and partnership. And for those that are right at the beginning of the journey, we've got a good publication about how to actually become a training provider from the get-go. We do some senior manager recruitment, and recently we've just got involved in Office for Student Registration, which is those organisations that are in a position to deliver higher education, HNC, HND, those type of qualifications. And we do an online training technology solutions. So that's the consultant side of business. About 5 years ago, we set up ESS Corporate Services, and that business is predominantly aimed at buying and selling companies. Within the UK, we are the leading deal advisors within training and education sector. I think confidently say we sell more training companies than anybody else that's actually in that particular sector at the moment. And we also do a search service. So we do on-market searches, but we also do off-market search as well for people that have specific targets that they want to buy into the sector. And there's lots of key benefits as to why people would actually want to buy a publicly funded training provider, or otherwise are not publicly funded. Those that are just generating corporate revenues are particularly attractive to people that have public funding, because they can use the public funding to effectively drive efficiencies through their acquired business by using a blended approach of public and commercial revenues. That is really I could spend hours on it. That really is a whistle-stop tour of what we do.
Thank you for that overview, Ian. Now let's talk about changes in the market, because there is quite an overhaul of funded training happening. We learned earlier, not just in this country. What kind of opportunities are created by these changes that you see? Okay,
so change in the training education market obviously can alter business valuations, because contracts are won, contracts are lost. contracts are increased. So demand for provision, competitive pressure, these changes, they can create distinct opportunities. Opportunities for buyers to access public funding where they've not previously been able to access them previously. The bar to entry is quite high to actually access public funded training. So what we're finding now is that corporate entities that want to enter the arena, they're buying training companies to get into it rather than trying to start from scratch. They're buying training companies to break into the market, part of their strategic direction.
Really interesting, actually. Yeah, that's. Sorry for interrupting you, Ian, but I just wanted to bring in Stuart as well, because the bar is quite high, as you said. Now, with the latest developments in funding, is that bar getting higher or lower?
Whether the bar's getting higher or not is a really good question. It's certainly getting more awkward, due to mainly due to devolution, to be honest. And apologies to the guys in Northern Ireland and Scotland, because we do appreciate that the sort of the entry to apprenticeships there that we've been discussing was that's purely the UK, sorry, the England and Wales. So just apologies for feeling a little bit left out there on the limb. We know that system's different. So for devolution, if we use Adult Skills Fund, or in old money, what we used to be referred to as AEB, there are now multiple devolved regions that have their own budgets, which creates postcode ring fences that were not there pre-devolution. So if I am a construction company and I want to train in Newcastle, I have to have a contract in Newcastle. If I get approached by an employer to go and deliver those in Sheffield, I have to have a contract in Sheffield, even though it might be the same employer. Okay, so that creates its own challenges. In those devolved areas, perhaps with the exception of London, for a change, says everyone else in the country, there's such a limited number of providers that are servicing each devolved region. So there might be, in some regions there might be 20, in another region there might only be 15. I think some regions it's as low as 8. So it really does vary. The other challenge is that each area will have its own local priorities. And what you tend to find is in the specifications for these funding awards is that local priorities tend to take precedent. So there quite often can be a greater proportion of a definitive pot of money set aside for example, green skills tends to be high across the board, as does engineering. So I'm on fairly safe ground there, but there are other quirks that different devolved areas will have, and the devil's in the detail. The detail is in the particular specifications. So in terms of the bar being higher, it's probably more awkward. It's not like a high jump bar. You've probably got a zigzag bar with a few spikes on it.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That really shows that it's not as easy a market as and easy to generalize things as it might seem. And coming back to you, Ian, with regards to the M&A part. You talked a little bit about why companies are buying other training businesses already. For example, they want to go into a market that's not easy to enter, and they can buy their way into it. But what are main reasons for a company owner to actually sell?
Okay, so for owner managers, often it's retirement, releasing personal wealth as well. So somebody that's maybe put, 10, 15, 20 years of their life into a business. They're wanting to de-risk. Training and education can be a risky business in terms of public funding. It moves about. You've got to be quick on your feet to stick with it. So there's a de-risk element there. People just get burnt out sometimes. I mean, I ran my business, our business, for 9 years. It's hard work. You always got to be on it. So there's an element of burnout. Again, health and personal circumstances, personal health, people's health. They have a bad diagnosis, or one of their loved ones gets a bad diagnosis, and it changes their perspective on life. Well, they want to go do something. They want to go do something different. Well, sometimes there's no internal successor, so there's nobody to hand over to. There's no, prince or princess in waiting to take on the mantle that maybe the children don't want to know. The option then is to sell externally outside the business, or the current management team aren't capable of buying it. Strategic timing, getting your timing right, is if you're under the Ofsted regime, having a good Ofsted, having solid funding revenues, public funding revenues, secured for at least 1 to 2 years, preferably with some commercial revenue as well. So the more revenue lines you've got coming to your business that are stable, that have got a track record, the more attractive you are going to be to a buyer, and getting that timing right is important. You wouldn't want to sell your business, for example, if you've got an Ofsted coming up, because a potential buyer would leverage that to drive the price down on the understanding that you might get a bad Ofsted, poor Ofsted, and that could be a disaster to any publicly funded training provider that's under that regime.
Ian, might just be worth also, guys, just to mention, because I know we've got lots of non-funded training providers here.
Yeah.
It might also explain why funded providers can be interested in your businesses. Because as Ian says, we often find funded providers, some of them can be one-trick ponies, and when buyers are looking to acquire them, they want a little bit more, especially if a seller wants to access kind of higher goodwill multiples. We tend to find that diversification makes a lot of sense. So there's the flip side of that for you guys here might be relevant.
That makes a lot of sense. That portfolio approach of de-risking your business. Now, Ian, you started talking about it already, but some factors that influence the valuation of a training business. Stuart, you talked about the devolution, the making the regional diversity within that. Ian, you talked about a few factors as well.
Yeah.
In the time that I was in M&A, it was simply 3 times the profit of a year. Was kind of it, but it's more complex, isn't it? Well, tell us a bit more.
It is more complex. So for a straightforward trade sale, you're quite right. Using that simplified calculation, it is quite often it's what gets used. Having said that, you find with the larger training providers, say from maybe 8 million plus upwards, that the multiples go up. And if you are selling to a private equity or a large international organization that's looking to buy you, they will look not only at what you're historically, but on your forward-facing valuation as well, and what synergies they can drive out of the business above and beyond the initial revenue flows that are coming through from buying that business. So the market research shows that if you've got the appropriate profile within your business, appropriate revenue lines, and you're of sufficient scale and the ability to scale further both nationally and internationally, then 10 times is achievable, and there are worked examples out there that have actually done that we can point to. 3 to 4 times is standard. It's anything between 3 to 4 times or 10 times, depending where you fit on that curve. And that is where the analysis we'd be doing from the information we gather to give you an indication of where you sit on that curve. What we think your valuation is now, given the market and the history, but we also advise is what you need to do if you're wanting to hold for now, and what you need to do to increase your business to get into the higher multiples. And we have a number of those conversations. Often we're talking to people 1, 2, 3 years before they actually make the final decision to sell. So we're advising on the pre-sale, where they need to position their business, what they need to do, what markets they need to enter. For example, some organizations will buy other businesses and consolidate to get into the higher multiple. So if they are at 3 to 4 times multiple now, and they make some strategic purchases at 3 to 4 times, then they can drive themselves into 5, 6, and 7 times multiple just by making those purchases. So they're buying at 3 to 4 and selling at 5 to 6. Can't be done overnight, but over a period of time, over a number of years, you can build that portfolio, and then you can exit. So you're buying at 3 and selling at 5, basically, for simplifying it.
That's an interesting way, but also to look at it. I'm going to ask you to share your screen, because I think you have an offer for our audience for a free valuation. While you're sharing your screen, and you talked about this, so selling your business is not something I do tomorrow. It probably has a lead time. What is the average years before decide or starting to think of it and actually transacting?
So we deal with 2 types of people that are wanting to sell their businesses. We deal with the ones that have just had enough. They know who we are. We've not spoken to them before, but they've had all our literature, that we're known in the industry, and they ring us up and said, look, we want to sell, let's start the process. Okay, fine. The other types of organizations are the ones that we've been talking to for years, and we've had ongoing dialogue. Maybe we've done some bit of consultancy work with them, strategic positioning. Maybe we haven't. Maybe they didn't need that. So they come back often a number of years later. I would say on average, we're talking to people about 12 to 18 months on average before they go on. If I just took all the number of people that we do sell or we put onto market, I would say about 18 months we're in conversations on average. Some of them just phone up and say, I've had enough. we've had a good Ofsted. I'm 62, 63, whatever, or I'm not in great health, I need to sell. So they're sort of, okay, let's get on with it. So for those ones that want to sell, the first place we go is here. We do a company valuation. So this is a free valuation. We don't charge anything for this. It's essentially, you fill this form in here. It comes through to our admin. They will send you out a client valuation form, which allows you to tell us a little bit more about your business. Obviously, we'll do some desk-based research as well before we have a meeting, and then we'll have a Zoom call, and we'll go through everything. We'll answer any questions that they've got, and then we'll see where they want to go with it. But the initial jumping in point is just to ask for a free valuation, and we take it from there. Pretty straightforward.
It is straightforward. Thank you very much.